Okay, here we go. Surprise video on intelligence and autism spectrum type disorders. Okay, I'm not a doctor. I do not have anyone in my family who is on the spectrum, but I have friends who are on the spectrum, and I have I think, some insights about it, I hope, based on some of the stuff that came through in some of the other readings this week. Kim at Intuitive View and, not Sterling, and Cash Peters both had aspects about autism in their readings this week. And in fact, Kim had sent me an email that we were exchanging emails, and she was like, "Oh, I'd like to talk to you about this a little more," but she must be too busy right now to get in touch, because I would love to talk to her about it. Let me first recap something from my book that is relevant, okay, and that I've referenced in comments before. Back in chapter 5 on page 27, I noted that as part of the Human Genome Project, which mapped the entirety of human DNA, there was a discovery of duplicates of a gene called SRGAP2. I don't know if you can. SRGAP2, okay? I don't know if that zoomed in or not. And it's involved with brain development. Human beings are the only known animals to have the extra copies. There are also variations on the SRGAP2 gene. There's an SRGAP2B and an SRGAP2D that don't do anything that we know of. But SRGAP2C, there were duplicates discovered in the human genome, and when these entered when they entered humanity, it was an accident, essentially. It was an accidental gene multiplication, which happens a lot. There are lots of accidental gene duplications, almost like nature experiments to try to find the best combination of genetics for the longevity of an organism. And what happened is SRGAP2C greatly improved brain neuron size in human beings. And I'm not a physicist or a scientist by any means. And it also led to greatly increased intelligence, okay? So I wrote in the book, it's common for genes to be duplicated by mistake, but to some scientists, a duplicate gene that's responsible for greatly enhanced intelligence suggests intelligence itself may have been accidental, a genetic quirk that turned out to have a huge evolutionary advantage. The first mutated humans to possess this gene would have appeared vastly more intelligent, perhaps superhuman or alien to their peers. And when they passed on the mutation, or when they made it, they passed on the mutation, and it eventually leads to us, modern humans, okay? There's another aspect. A damaged SRGAP1 gene, which is from the same protein family as the SRGAP2 proteins, can lead to developmental problems and seizures, and researchers have identified several genetic variants that are common to people with autism, okay? So, and in the book it says here, scientists are now trying to determine if mutations in SRGAP2C also lead to brain disorders, leading me to wonder if high intelligence can be considered a disorder, like an accident. It's a really strange thought. So if you're having trouble getting your head around it, I understand, because I can't quite fully get my head around it. But here's where I want to go with it. Based on Kim's readings and Cash's readings this week, both of them point to individuals among us, and I think the most recent example used was Elon Musk, who have extremely high intelligence, but maybe lack some outward social skills, or they seem socially awkward. And even in my book, I detailed the story of a man whose name is escaping me at the moment, but he's an artist, and they took him up into a helicopter in New York City, and he had like this 10 or 15 minute helicopter ride around New York, and then he drew the New York skyline from memory from seeing it once from from a helicopter. Okay, this level of intelligence is to us almost godlike. Okay, now assuming that there really is a God would be even vastly more intelligent, and to a degree probably that we can't even really conceive. But what I'm beginning to wonder is, it's been said that the light workers sort of began with the boomer generation. They were wave one. The second wave of light workers were Gen X, which is my generation, wave two. And that now, as you get into millennials, and I think what they call indigos now, the generations that follow, are supposed to like help complete this mission of raising the vibration of Earth. Okay, so now we're talking about vibrations too. Of an Earth that vibrated at a higher frequency would presumably then have access to higher vibrational levels of existence, which might mean that we would more easily perceive what is considered the other side, the spiritual realm, where our souls go, where we die. You know, let's say Earth is vibration 4. I'm just picking random numbers. These are not meaningful numbers. And heaven is vibration 5. And by bringing up the amount of light and positive energy on this planet from light workers assisted by archangels, that we get Earth up to like 4.5, and then we start to get glimpses or greater connectivity to level 5. But to get us there, it's possible that we may need to evolve as a species, human beings. So it is possible in my mind that the abundance of young people who are exhibiting what like spectrum type behaviors and conditions, it may be very much what Cash and Kim alluded to, which is that it's like a vibrational mismatch right now. Human beings vibrate. The Earth vibrates at a frequency, but so do we. We vibrate at a frequency, a specific frequency. And when you try, this is speculation on my part, when you drop a high vibrational being, like a very high vibrational being, down into a lower vibrational shell, it's like a mismatch. The body doesn't match the capabilities of the intelligence. Do you see what I'm saying? I hope this makes sense. So what you get is, like Cash described, the soul, the higher vibrational soul that comes into the lower dimensional body, experiences confusion, and it feels like it's looking through a small slit at reality, whereas its conception of reality is so different than what human beings would be that they don't match up, and so these people end up more internal, or at least initially. And then what Cash alluded to in his video is that over time, people on the spectrum, they often learn, they adapt to the vessel they're in. They learn how to better expand their communicative skills and their ability to exist more normally in the world once they become more familiar with the vessel they're in at this vibration. Okay. So it occurred to me that this could mean several things. This is a bit of an extreme statement. It could be completely off. But it may be that the future of mankind on Earth is really going to be these beings who are coming in from a higher vibration. In other words, it may be that the next level of intelligence really is coming in now, and we're experiencing it we're experiencing it from other beings who seem a little unearthly and a little odd. They're on the spectrum because they're so intelligent. Their ability to grasp concepts beyond the normal human is so great that eventually they will be the dominant species. They'll still be humans, but they'll be the dominant strain of humans, much like, as I'm describing in the book, when the first humans with the SR-GAP2C gene showed up, they seemed otherworldly to the humans that came before them. And all it was a genetic quirk. It was an accident. It was a duplicate gene that somehow increased their intelligence, which is very strange. And then the SR gap 1 genes, like I said, the passage I read, these are often the people that have conditions on the spectrum. So there's something weird genetically related to intelligence. And if you want to take it really far, you could, as I do in the book, you could say that like super high intelligence, way beyond human, is almost like, from our perspective, it looks like madness, because your awareness would be so vast. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, say you were a godly being, literally, like you're some kind of god, a friend of God, one of God's first creations. You're like not God, but close. You come to Earth, and your awareness of what exists here is so different from what a human being perceives. Like, you can maybe see the energy in the air. Maybe you see every single person's aura. Maybe you see for miles. Maybe you see down into the earth and see what's inside the planet. Or maybe you can even see the vibrations of living beings and trees and rocks, and everything that exists vibrates. Maybe you can see these vibrations, and therefore your perception almost seems like madness from a human perspective. Okay. So I'm very much going in circles. It is a very hard topic to talk about, especially as a non-scientific person. But I feel like intuitively I have like some grasp of what this is about. So at the risk of repeating myself, I'll just say again that, both Kim, because Kim used the example of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is on record as saying that he thinks that he is an alien. And my mom has been joking for years that she's an alien. Now that's a whole different conversation. But what we might think of as aliens might really just be higher dimensional beings, right? And there seems to be some belief that aliens are among us, and that they will be revealed to us soon, that the governments of the world already know that they're here, and that all these stories in the media about aliens are a setup for an introduction to some kind of alien race. And they may well seem real strange to us, and they may seem maybe not unlike someone who we would consider autistic. Maybe they're level 5 type beings, whereas we're level 4 type beings. They exist at a higher vibration. Their perception of reality is different and more complex than ours, which doesn't invalidate the human experience, like my experience, your experience, at the level that we're at, but it does mean that they perceive things differently. So it could be that these higher vibrational future humans are not really that unlike maybe aliens as far as their level of intelligence, okay? Because one of the things that we have yet to master here, which supposedly alien races have mastered, is anti-gravity technology. Because anti-gravity technology would be necessary. You'd have to figure out how to manipulate gravity in order to travel the ridiculous distances between solar systems. There's no way around that travel without some form of anti-gravity technology. And that's why in my book, even, I didn't give much credence to the idea of aliens being on Earth, because I thought that you can't get around the gravity that's too far between galaxies. And so I was assuming that, if anything, maybe a civilization would send its little machines since they can survive deep space and cosmic radiation better than any kind of biological being might. I'll add another wrinkle by pondering or mentioning that we are also on planet Earth in the middle of a technological revolution that is on the edge of artificial intelligence. And what that's going to mean for future humans is yet unknown. We don't know what will happen when the computing power of a computer is the same as that of a human brain. Whether computers themselves will claim to be alive, whether they will think they have souls, whether they will end up incorporated into our bodies. So there's lots of ways in which the future could be very unrecognizable to us from where we are right now. And I don't mean to scare anyone by mentioning any of this, but it's just what's on my mind as far as where, what might the future be like. And it's entirely possible that, let's assume that a lot of the people on the spectrum now who are coming in are super high intelligence, and they're going to be the ones who wrestle with the issue of what do we do with the technology? Do we merge with it? Do we integrate with it? Do we set rules on what's allowed with technology and what's not allowed? But it's going to get, the already weird sci-fi world is going to get weirder. It's going to get stranger, more strange. So I think that's the gist of what I really wanted to say. But I just found it very interesting that Cash and Kim both kind of tuned into this notion of there being more people on the with some with forms of autism or other spectrum type conditions that I admittedly do not understand firsthand. I understand them through a few friends to a certain degree. I know that Cash Peters has even said that he himself is autistic, and you get that sense about him. There's an otherness to him that he's different than some of the other readers. His otherness is more pronounced, and it's not a judgment on him. I like him just fine, and he's clearly very intelligent, but his otherness, I think, is a little more pronounced, and you can read between the lines of what he often says to sense even some loneliness on his part at being so different from other people. And I can relate to, because most of my life I have felt very much different from other people and more on the outside, and that my ideas were maybe going to be strange to a lot of people. And that was my experience in writing the book too, that when it came out, it didn't make a lot of noise, because I think the ideas were just very strange and a little too out there for a lot of people, the spiritual ideas even, except for the spiritual community, which is more dialed into that stuff. I'm sighing because I'm hoping that this video makes some sense, and that I haven't just thrown a bunch of things at you completely out of context. But I'm very fascinated by what's going on right now. Another thing I'll mention is that, let's assume for the moment that a lot of the people, the younger people who maybe are on the spectrum, so to speak, right now, let's say they really kind of are the future of mankind, that they do become the dominant evolutionary version of humankind, and average people like myself, maybe yourself, we die off over time. And I don't mean tomorrow. I mean over decades, generations, hundreds, maybe 100 years. Okay, let's assume that these people inherit the earth. Well, just because they're more intelligent, like raw intelligence, does not automatically equal higher moral intelligence. And here's what I mean by that. I have very mixed feelings about Elon Musk. He is obviously an extremely intelligent human being, but he has sent mixed messages about his intentions with his wealth and the technology that he's trying to develop. For example, with Mars, he's determined to go to Mars, but there's a lot of problems with going to Mars that really need to be discussed. One is you're, I think, at least a third of the way further away from the sun. So, like, literally, if you lived on Mars in a see-through dome, the amount of sunlight you're going to get is going to be way less. Like, so if you think you got season affective disorder here in Buffalo, bad now in the winter, now imagine being that much further away from the sun on Mars. Mars's gravity, I believe, is about a seventh of the Earth's. So unless they figure out how to have artificial gravity everywhere, humans basically will physically devolve in just a couple of generations, because without the resistance of as much gravity from the planet itself, they will get, their bones will get weaker. They'll actually physically become smaller over time. Now I assume they're going to solve that problem. And then the journey to Mars, however long, let's say it takes 3 years on a ship or whatever it takes right now, that's exposing whoever goes to tremendous amounts of interstellar cosmic radiation. If they don't figure out a way to properly shield those people from that radiation, they will either die or be half dead by the time they get to Mars. So what I'm suggesting is that sometimes people with a lot of intelligence and a lot of resources and a lot of wealth have these grandiose ideas, but they don't always think of the human cost, okay? And if you're an Elon Musk and you're already kind of like more intelligent than the average human, do you care as much about the human cost? The jury's out on that one. And I'm also not trying to suggest that anyone who is autistic or on the spectrum doesn't care about other human beings. But if you were so much more intelligent than other human beings that they were difficult to relate to, you might not have as much interest in them as they have in their own lives. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is entirely possible that Elon Musk and people like him will usher in the next age of technology, but I feel that their motives should be examined just as carefully as the motives of anyone with a lot of money and a lot of power. Because when those two things are combined, sometimes what gets squeezed out is empathy. And it's certainly not just among someone like Elon Musk. There are plenty of sociopathic world leaders and billionaires who the lives of ordinary human beings are not consequential to them. Not really. They're just statistics, okay? And what I'm also suggesting is that if, in fact, this wave of new people, let's say these higher dimensional beings with this greater intelligence than you or I have, come down into Earth, and they get into Earth human bodies and they learn how to acclimate, and they're part of the raising of the vibration of Earth, and they become the dominant species on Earth. It's not necessarily true that their lives or that life on Earth will be better than it is now. It could be. I would only say that it would be vastly different. And what I'm trying to get at with that is to value the life and experience that you are having now. Even if there are more intelligent beings that end up inheriting the planet than the beings we are now, our experiences, our ability to perceive beauty in the world, to feel love for other human beings, for animals, for the Earth itself, our emotions, our our generosity, all of our good feelings aren't inferior to the feelings of a more evolved being just because they have maybe higher intelligence. And I'm also implying that we may, you and I and the people we know, we may be an evolutionary stepping stone to the next version of humankind. And we may not last. And so in that sense, we are the rarest of some, we are some of the rarest of the rare human beings to ever exist potentially on planet Earth, because before the Industrial Revolution, human beings were really largely unchanged for tens of thousands of years. There really wasn't much of a change in the circumstances of life for a very long time. Then once the Industrial Revolution begins, you start to see longer lifespans. You start to see people living longer, growing taller, growing bigger, growing stronger. You know, now if you look at like the average height of a human being versus 100 years ago, or the weight or the strength, it's just off the charts. Whereas tens of thousands of years before the Industrial Revolution, that there probably wasn't that much difference in a human being for all of that time. And as evolved as we are in this moment, we may not be the end stage of the evolution. We may be just a stepping stone to the next one. So I think what I'm trying to say is appreciate your uniqueness as a human being in the middle of a modern world, a modern industrialized world that is on the verge of becoming something else. Perhaps even a somewhat post-human world, or a transhuman world in which technology and human beings are more integrated. And that would be so foreign to my experience, to your experience here now, to be integrated with technology, that it is incomparable. We wouldn't even know what it feels like. So enjoy where you're at. Enjoy this moment in time as the rare human beings that we may very well be. And not to go on too much longer, I'll try to wrap it up, but there's lots of stuff coming. Mind reading technology is coming in one form or another. It's coming. I don't know how soon, maybe not my lifetime, but brainwaves are just energy. They're just electrical impulses. And as they begin to experiment more with interfaces with the human brain, they're pretty much at the point where they can measure the electrical impulse of a thought and translate it into words. The technology to do that at a distance doesn't yet exist as far as we know, but you can bet your bottom dollar that governments around the world are looking into it, some for good purposes and some for less benevolent purposes. So it is also possible that in time, what we think of as the sovereign human mind will be not quite as sovereign. You can already see with your phone, you talk about something, your phone listens to you, and then it sends you an ad for something you talked about, because it's a passive listening device that captures essentially your spoken thought. So privacy issues are going to be a big deal. There already are, but they're going to be an even bigger deal as this technology continues to progress. And you can also bet that for all the mind reading technology that may come into existence, there will be anti-mind reading technology too. Technology to protect one's thoughts against it. Maybe it'll be tinfoil hats after all. Woo! That is a long winder. So if you got any thoughts about it, you're more than welcome to share, of course. I just feel like I don't even know if it makes sense now. I wasn't really prepared to do this video. I was kind of tired already, I thought. But I also knew that if I waited a few days more, that the thoughts were going to fade, because my mind's already moving on to other things. So that's my thought on the latest videos by Kim at Intuitive View and Cash Peters, and about evolving intelligence on planet Earth. Whew. Don't worry. Don't worry. It'll all be okay. Pray for Spirit and God to be with you, with me, with all of us always, and it'll turn out as it's meant to. It will. Okay? So stay well, be joyful, enjoy your uniqueness at this point in time.